Welcome to the Cheating Secrets channel.
Luke Abrams prepared himself at his workstation and waited for the song to finish before he turned off the engine and opened the door. He looked at the neon sign above the building's entrance and felt proud to see the inscription, "Abrams Manufacturing," above the door. The security guard greeted him as Luke headed to his corner office on the top floor. His financial director told him that the company was now valued at $20 million, and not a month went by without some firm or venture capitalists wanting to discuss buying the business. Luke was not interested because he loved his work, his business, his team, and he saw no reason to cash out at his young age. Life was good. All these years, his family life had been wonderful. He and Becky, his wife of 14 years, initially struggled when he started his business, but now they lived very comfortably. Becky worked part-time as a marketing consultant and often worked from home. She was tall, standing at 173 centimeters, with fiery red hair and an incredible figure. Her body was perfect, and she had bonus legs that stretched for miles. Their sexual life had been really good, although Luke noticed a definite decrease over the last 6 months from 3 to 4 times a week to just once a week. Becky also seemed more attached to her phone, sending messages to God knows whom, and one day, when he picked it up to check the sports scores, he noticed it was now password protected, something that hadn't been the case before. He spoke with her about sex and how she had become more reserved and quiet in their communication, but she said she felt older and more tired, and he should just know that she loved him more than he could ever imagine. They talked about children. She wasn't ready yet, but he told her how important it was for him, and she agreed that within 6 months she would stop using birth control. She wasn't as excited about this as he was, but he felt that she was thrilled by the idea. As Luke sat in his office, pondering this, his friend and vice president of sales, Chad Warwick, entered with a shy look. Chad had been his college friend, and they had played football and hockey together in senior classes. He wasn't his best friend, but Luke considered him close. Now their relationship was a mix of friendship, but Luke was also the boss, and although he treated his employees as partners, ultimately, it was Luke who decided what they should do. Chad peeked in the door and said, "Boss, I'm feeling terrible today. Seems like I have the flu or something, so if you don't mind, I'm going to go home to sleep and will return later or tomorrow. I've finished the proposal on the new climate control systems. See you tomorrow." "All right, Chad, take care and I hope you feel better," Luke responded. Luke decided to work more on the new business line he planned to launch and opened his workstation to retrieve the files. He noticed that he had an old version and remembered that he had worked on it over the weekend and saved the files on his home computer instead of uploading them to the company server. He decided to ask Becky to email the file instead of going home. He tried to call the home line, but it went to voicemail. He tried calling Becky's phone, but it was turned off, which he found strange considering it was a workday. Well, nothing to worry about. He would be home in 20 minutes. Luke enjoyed the weather and the tunes on NPR as he turned into his block and approached his house. He noticed a car in the driveway that seemed familiar, and it didn't take him long to realize it was Chad's Lexus. Luke parked on the street, walked up the driveway, and quietly opened the front door. The first floor was silent, with neither lights nor radio on. Becky was not in the office at her desk. He went to the kitchen and then heard moans and voices coming from the master bedroom. In his heart and mind, he could not believe what he already knew from the morning. Someone was having sex with his wife in their bed. He grabbed a long, wust-off knife from the shelf and slowly walked upstairs. He stood in the hallway, hidden by the door frame, so they could not see him, but he could hear what they were saying. They were embracing and talking, and he heard Becky say, "Chad, we can do this a few more times. I think Luke is starting to suspect my detachment and my constant messaging on the phone. And I only make love with him once a week because I feel so guilty, and it's so wrong, to make love with you and then with him the next day. I really enjoy our little affair over the last 4 months. It's my indulgence in my desires, to engage in dirty and illicit sex before I stop taking the pills to have children. So, I want you to love me like you never have, because this will be the last time here, then the Denver conference, and then we'll end it." Luke remembered that Becky had told him she was going to a marketing conference in Denver in 2 weeks, and quickly realized it coincided with the sales conference Chad would attend in Denver that same weekend. Luke was devastated by what he heard. He pulled out his phone and turned on the video, slowly peeking from behind the doorframe. His wife Becky was now riding atop his friend and colleague Chad, bouncing on him like a bucking horse. She was yelling, "Come on, Chad, love me. Love me harder. You love it when I have sex with you in your marital bed, don't you? You can't get enough of me, and no one can love you like I do. Say it, damn it. Yes, Chad. No one loves me the way you do. Now make it good for me." At that moment, Luke burst into the room, a phone in one hand and a knife in the other. He grabbed Becky by the hair, pulled her away from Chad, spun her around, and pushed her onto the bed. She screamed and, seeing it was Luke, her eyes widened, her mouth fell open, and she cried out, "Luke, it means nothing." At that moment, she tried to stand and approach Luke, while Chad tried to move to the edge of the bed and stand. But Luke brandished the knife and shouted, "Both of you sit on the bed and shut up, damn it, or you'll find a 12-inch blade in your chest. Quick!" They both sat down and pulled a sheet around them. Becky started to sob uncontrollably, and Chad began to speak to Luke. "Boss, it really is nothing. Just sex. Just a distraction for us. It means nothing. Luke, I love you. It was just meaningless sex with Chad. It changes nothing about my feelings for you. It was just one last fling, a bit of wild oats before we settle down with children. Please, Luke, it's nothing. Let Chad go, come and hold me, and I'll make everything right." Luke looked at her as if she had lost her mind. "Becky, it means nothing? Well, I think you've proven that our marriage means nothing to you. You've shown that you don't respect me and that I was a fool to believe you loved me. How can you say you love me when you've been sleeping with Chad in our bed for months? You want me to hold you? Damn it, I can barely look at you and will never touch you again. That's for sure. Damn it. Now just sit there and shut up, you pathetic sack of shit." Becky recoiled at the sight of his anger and pain. He had never spoken to her like this. He almost idolized her and treated her with love and respect, and his response cut right to her soul. With these words, Luke made a quick call, looked at Chad, and said, "Jane, this is Luke. I'm sending you a video of Chad sleeping with my wife Becky in our bed. I don't know if you were aware that he has been mocking you and the kids, and I'm really sorry to have to tell you this." Luke paused for a few minutes before hanging up, then said to Chad, "She says not to worry about coming home. Obviously, this isn't the first time you've betrayed your wife and your children. Now add that you've betrayed your friend and your boss and wrecked 2 marriages. What a pathetic sack of shit you are. I'll give you one chance to save your job. Tell me exactly when this started and how many times you two have had sex." Becky looked at Luke and said, "Don't make us go through this. It doesn't matter. It means nothing, and it stops right now. Please." Luke's gaze, full of hatred and pain, made her recoil further back, press into the headboard of the bed, and look away. She continued to cry and sob while Chad responded to Luke. "Luke, please, don't throw away our friendship over this and don't let it affect the good work I do for the company. Becky means nothing to me, and I mean nothing to her. It was only the sexual lust of an illicit affair that tempted us. This is our 4th meeting. The first time we were both in Denver at different conferences, and I knew she would be there. I called her the first evening to go out for dinner. Well, we ate, drank a lot, danced, and really felt a spark between us, so that night and the next, we went up to my room and had sex. Then, about a month later, Becky called me and told me you were out of town for a whole day visiting a new construction site, and she asked me to come over. We ended up having sex in your room, and she seemed to enjoy doing it in your marital bed. 3 weeks later, we booked a room at the Hilton, met for lunch at noon, and had sex there. And now, she called me and asked me to fake being sick, come over, and have sex with her because she was incredibly aroused. We were planning to meet at the next conference in Denver next month for the last time and spend 3 nights having sex with each other, trying to end this. We both felt guilty and terrible for what we did to you and my family. Becky knows you want to have children, and she's going to stop taking the pills, so we decided this is it, and we're going to be good spouses again. I'm so sorry, Luke. Looking back, I knew it was so wrong. And now I've ruined my marriage and possibly yours and my career if you can't forgive us. Becky looked at Luke and said, Yes, Luke, I was so caught up in this secret. It wasn't anything about you, Luke, I love you. I've never loved anyone but you, and I want your children and to grow old with you. You've treated me like a queen. Sex with Chad was fun, but it was nothing compared to making love with you. Please, don't throw me and our marriage away over a mistake. It meant nothing. It meant nothing? Do you even know me, you creature? How can you think that allowing another man to be close to you means nothing to our marriage? How do you think I can ever get over the pain of being cheated on? Get past the lies and ever trust you again? How could you think I'd ever want to touch your cheating body again? How can you think I could have the same spark, the same connection, and the same love I had for you after you've insulted me so? How can you not see the strain this has already put on our marriage? The lack of conversation and communication. The reduction in lovemaking, turning it into just mechanical sex. A drunken night could be a mistake, but planning and holding meetings at conferences out of town and at our home is a damn affair, not a mistake. What the hell is wrong with you? For the first time, Becky began to understand what she had done. She had convinced herself that it was meaningless sex, and it wouldn't harm her relationship. It might even make it stronger. But as Luke spoke, she realized she had emotionally and physically distanced herself from him. She didn't understand why, since she loved and wanted only him. Perhaps it was the guilt she was trying to bury, eating away at her and their relationship. She thought her affair would never be discovered. Luke trusted her so much. She saw now that this trust could never be the same again. She thought Luke loved her so much that he would forgive her, and she could quickly make him forget by being a loving and caring wife and having children. Now she realized how she had been deceiving herself. She had fooled herself into thinking she deserved this, and it would make her a better wife. Now she saw how much pain and disrespect she had poured onto the person she loved and wanted to have children with and live a long and happy life. My God, she thought, have I ruined everything? How do I get through this? All she could do was look at Luke and say, Please, Luke. Please forgive me for the pain I've caused you. I didn't think enough about what I was doing. I didn't know it would be so destructive. I never wanted to disrespect you. I never wanted to cause you this much pain. Luke picked up the phone and scrolled to the part of the video where she was screaming, Yes, Chad. No one loves me the way you do. How the hell could you think you weren't disrespecting me when you make such comments and sleep with this worthless piece of shit in my own bed? You disgust me. Luke looked at Chad and said, There's no way to save your damn job. Don't bother coming in tomorrow, you're fired. Now get the hell out of my house. Chad began to get up, and Becky did too. But Luke shouted at her, Stay there in those sheets, you beast, and don't move. She pressed back into the bed, seeing how the pain and grievance on Luke's face turned into anger and pure hatred. My God, what have I done to hurt such a good person and turn his love for me into hatred? Chad grabbed his clothes, dashed down the stairs, burst through the door, and sped away in his car. Luke looked at Becky and wept. She got up from the bed and tried to approach him and hug him, but he looked at her with disgust, turned away, and raised the knife to keep her away. She burst into tears and ran to the bathroom, locked the door, turned on the shower, and collapsed to the floor. She hoped that maybe if she gave Luke some space, he would calm down and they could talk. That was her only hope. She cried and washed herself for half an hour. After washing up, drying off with a towel, and putting on a robe, she quietly opened the bathroom door, fearing another furious scream from Luke and knowing she deserved it. But the room was silent. She peered into the hallway and the house seemed quiet. Luke, I will prepare the guest bedroom for you and will keep my distance for as long as you want, until you calm down enough to let me talk to you, explain my actions, and ask for forgiveness." She heard no response. She saw that the dresser drawers were open and empty, and most of the clothes in his closet were gone. 2 large suitcases from the closet were also missing. Then she turned around and saw a 12-inch butcher knife plunged up to the hilt into the pillow and mattress. She realized that Luke had left, and she could only hope that he would stay safe, not harm himself, and respond to her calls when he calmed down in a day or two. She entered the guest bedroom, threw herself on the bed, curled up in the fetal position, and cried until she fell asleep. Luke went to his office and spent a very restless night on the couch in the adjacent conference room. He notified HR and the security service about terminating Chad's employment. Later that same morning, Chad actually showed up at the site, assuming Luke had cooled down, but security took his badge, escorted him to his car, and told him that if he appeared again, they would call the police. Luke spent a couple of hours alone at his desk, contemplating where to go next. He clearly understood that, despite the depth of his love for Becky, their marriage had come to an end. He could never feel the same spark of joy, trust, and deep connection of his heart and soul with her, which meant the marriage was a failure. Pride, hurt, anger, jealousy, it didn't matter what it was called. She was no longer his life partner. There could be no talk of having children. It was all over. Luke called his financial director, and they spent 4 hours in a very detailed discussion about the value of the company and what Luke had decided to do. His right-hand man, the financier, was stunned to hear about Chad and Becky. He pleaded with him not to do anything rash, to allow his anger and pain to subside for a few weeks, and then decide what he wanted to do. But Luke had already made his decision. Becky woke up in the morning, and the pain and grievance she had seen on Luke's face quickly overwhelmed her as she fully came to her senses. "My God, how could I have been so foolish? Mediocre sex with someone I barely like, let alone love, might have destroyed my marriage to the only man I truly love. What the hell is wrong with me?" She was determined to fix this, to win Luke back, to restore them both to what they were before she was foolish enough to start an affair. She was sure that Luke loved her so much that he would never leave. She couldn't help but call him on his mobile. It immediately went to voicemail, so she left him a message. "Luke, I am so sorry. I love you so much and I know I've hurt you, and I'm so ashamed. But Luke, you love me, and I love you, and we can get through this. I'll do anything you want to make this right. I promise to be the best wife and mother you could ever hope for. Please, come to me or call me. I need you. Please, talk to me, Luke." Luke did not respond either on that day or the next. On the third day, she called his office and spoke to his administrator, Brenda. Brenda was very close to Luke, practically idolized him, and Luke had told her about what had happened between Chad and Becky. Brenda answered Becky's call and unambiguously informed her that Luke was busy, instructed her not to allow any personal calls to him, and that he would appreciate being left alone until he was ready. Becky assumed she meant ready to talk, but Brenda did not actually say that. Well, for the moment, Becky assumed that Luke needed some time. Becky called Chad and now knew that Luke had indeed fired him. She also heard that Chad's wife had kicked him out, and he had returned to his parents' house. He hinted that he would like to come and talk to Becky about getting Luke to forgive them, but she told him to back off, and that she never wanted to speak to him again. She blamed him largely, although subconsciously she knew she was deceiving herself and felt just as guilty, if not more so, than Chad. She couldn't understand why she had actually done it and how foolish it was to risk everything she had with Luke. Becky gave Luke a week, then couldn't bear it anymore. She tried calling his cell, but the number was no longer in service. She called his office, and they told her that Luke would not be available and that she should stop calling. This was too much for her. She had to do whatever it took. She wanted to keep her affair secret, hoping and assuming that Luke would not want their family and friends to find out she had cheated on him. But now she started calling all his friends to ask if they knew where he was and what he was thinking. All of them responded that they had nothing to say to her, and that Luke had told them it was their personal matter. The way they treated her made her realize that Luke had probably told them about the affair, which added to her shame and sorrow. Eventually, Becky called Luke's parents to see if he was staying with them, but when they picked up the phone, she introduced herself and greeted them. They hung up. She called again, and they switched to voicemail. She went to Luke's company and persuaded the security to let her into the lobby. They called Brenda, who came to Becky and directly asked what she needed. Becky, close to tears, said, "I want my husband to come down and talk to me. He should respect his wife enough to speak with me and let me explain. He should respect his wife as much as she respected him in their marriage. Maybe you should think more about what you have done. Anyway, Luke no longer works here. He sold the company and moved out of this area and made it very clear that he is not passing on any information about his current status, well-being, or location to you. Now, please leave, or I will ask security to escort you out." Becky rushed home in complete confusion. Sold the company? He would never do that. Left the area? Why wouldn't he talk to her? She sat down at her computer and tried to write him a lengthy apology email, but when she sent it to both his personal and work email addresses, it bounced back. The addresses were invalid. She called his parents again, but they had blocked her number. She returned to the guest bedroom and collapsed on the bed. Over the next 4 weeks, Becky lived like a zombie. She heard nothing about Luke, not a word about where he was or how he was dealing with their marriage. In desperation, she hired a private detective agency, and eventually, they sent her a report with limited information. They told her that Luke had sold his company, and although the exact price was not disclosed, it was estimated to have gone for over $20 million. They told her that he had closed all of Becky's and their joint bank accounts and credit cards, canceled his phone, internet, and email, sold all his valuable possessions, and apparently left the town. They told her that Luke had paid off the mortgage on the house and transferred the deed to her name. They were unable to get anyone from his circle of friends, colleagues, or relatives to tell them anything about his whereabouts or how to contact him. 8 weeks after Luke left, a man approached the front door and handed Becky an envelope. She saw that the address label bore Luke's name and opened the envelope, hoping to get some information. The first thing that fell out when she opened it was his wedding ring. Then some documents, and then a photograph that had been cut into strips. Piecing the photograph together, she saw that it was their wedding portrait that had been shredded. She couldn't hold back and cried for several minutes before she could open the rest of the contents of the envelope. There were legal documents and a letter. Inside the envelope, there was also a flash drive. She grabbed the letter and began to read. "Becky, I know you wanted to see me, talk to me, and were sure that we could end your affair. You thought it was just meaningless sex, a mistake, something I should just forget, and that we would return to our marriage as it was before you decided to break our wedding vows and my trust. I was astounded that you could deceive yourself, thinking that it was ever possible to have the same or even close to what we had. I know you never loved me, at least not in the way I loved you, since you could deceive me. It seems you didn't realize the pain you caused. No one has ever hurt me like this, and that it came from the woman I loved more than life itself was too much to ever forgive. I will never be able to trust you again, never be able to touch you or make love to you. Maybe you don't remember what happened, or perhaps it was not important to you. If so, I've included a video of you and Chad destroying our marriage. Just your words alone are enough to break my heart every time I think about them. From the calls I initially received from our very close friends and relatives about how I could leave you and why I was so cruel to disappear from your life, it became clear to me that you never took responsibility for your actions. I am sorry to say that the same video, with a different letter, was sent to these people so they could understand the depth of the betrayal and that nothing could be done about it. I was so devastated and destroyed by you that I decided to retaliate. I am not proud of my actions, but I believe they were the only path open to me. I have decided that from this day on, you will never hear from me again. You will never see me again. And I will never return to our home, to our city, maybe even to our state. I will probably never understand why you did this. What led you to it? I hope you understand this before you enter another serious relationship, and I hope you remember my pain before you cheat on someone else again. I hope that someday in the near future I can overcome the pain, humiliation, and disrespect I have experienced, and be able to remember the earlier times in our relationship that were filled with love. I hope that someday, instead of the hatred I feel towards you, I can feel at least indifference, or maybe find forgiveness or understanding. However, you will never know about it. It may not matter to you, but I will never know, and I will live with that. Goodbye. The last packet of documents in the envelope was titled, Dissolution of Marriage, but at that moment Becky saw nothing through her tears and collapsed to the floor. 5 years had passed since Luke disappeared, and, as stated in the letter, Becky has not heard a word from anyone about his health, his spirit, his whereabouts, or his life. Luke was quite generous in the divorce settlement, offering her $1 million, the house, and the property instead of any ongoing financial support. The lawyer told her that it was the best deal she could get, since the $22 million for which Luke sold the company are not held in the United States and will never be available for any legal compensation. Becky really didn't care. In her view, she deserved nothing and would never contest what Luke considered fair. At first, her life was very difficult because friends and family saw the devastating video of her sleeping with Chad in her marital bed. She understood how deeply she had hurt Luke and how she had compelled him to hurt her by sending out the video. She also realized that it was a way to prevent anyone from asking about what had happened and whether they could ever be together again. She felt extreme humiliation, embarrassment, and pain from friends and relatives seeing it, but she understood that it was still not as bad as what she had done to Luke. She lived with her shame and, at her parents' insistence, decided to see a psychotherapist to work on her grief and depression and try to change her life. She had a few dates, but she seemed to never enjoy them and never let anyone into her personal thoughts and pain, so nothing ever progressed beyond a few painfully awkward encounters. There were several nights when she tried to find solace in sex. They were so awkward, so humiliating, and served as such a grim reminder of what once was, and how low she had stooped, that she could no longer bear the thought of meaningless sex. When Luke left, he took the photo albums, and she had no pictures left of them together. With each passing year, her memories of his appearance, his voice, his spirit and personality, and his loving touches gradually faded from her life.
Thank you for listening until the end. See you in the next episode of Cheating Secrets. Take care of yourself and your loved ones. Goodbye.